Hey folks, Kevin here. Well, it's May 7th, 2021, and today what I thought I'd do is address a question and a comment on two different videos regarding using paper products, cardboard products, and weed suppression as well. And I'm trying to incorporate my responses to these questions with some footage I shot the other day of using cardboard, paper products to underneath wood chips to suppress weeds in the walkway in the center of our trellises. Now, a few weeks ago, I started with, in our western garden plot, we have the large, wide and tall trellis that's made out of cattle panels that are supported by ties to T-posts, and on the outside of each one of these cattle panels we plant our various bean crops. We have two other such trellises, and all of them I like to have nothing growing in the center of them, but at the same time using standard waste products that might be thrown out or not recognize the value of them, including every paper product you can imagine, from the flyers that have various color inks, to journals that have inks on them as well, to envelopes that have the little plastic panels in the envelopes, to boxes that have some tape products, and some of them are more biodegradable tapes as well. And I have made videos in the past about bioremediation systems that we have here on the property. We have canal systems that are designed for bioremediation. And when I say bioremediation, I'm talking about phytoremediation, the plants basically breaking down some compounds, mycoremediation, which is the bulk of what we have here, and that's where various fungal species break down the various products, and certainly other microbes such as bacteria break down products as well. Now, when I posted the video with the with building soil slowly, which Alan commented on, Alan commented, geez, he's all for reducing the amount of waste that we generate as people. But he was concerned with some of the ink products that are used in printing ink from our computer paper to the magazines, the flyers that we get, the glossy stuff that's in magazines, the ink products that's in cardboards. And for organic certification, you're not supposed to use, from the best of my knowledge, not supposed to use any cardboard that has ink on it as well. I haven't actually read that in regulations, and we are not certified organic here. We use all organic practices, but I do break down and build soil in different locations where they aren't in close contact with, they're in our forest out there basically. And so we use all of the various paper products, and we put leaves over them, and twigs and sticks, that sort of thing. And it could be the cardboard box from my cheap wine that I get, to all the things that I talked about. We use paper towels for napkins, and those are reused for cleaning up messes and all because of the animal friends that we have. So all of those things are being used in what I call slow soil building situations. And Alan had said, geez, he's really concerned about the inks, and since some of them can't be completely broken down, they could potentially get into our foods and get into our systems. And absolutely that is still possible. So at least twice a year I go to Google Scholar, so you can either just in a Google search engine search Google Scholar, and it'll come up with, I think the web address is scholar.google.com. I believe that's it. But once you go to that, you're going to get peer-reviewed articles. Now, are all these perfect? No. I've gone over the how to review journal articles in the past, how to look at their statistical analysis, materials and methods. Is there did they fail? Do they disclose their interests? In other words, the Broccoli Association printing really good information about sulforaphane and their broccoli products and so on. So do they have skin in the game, basically? and looking also at their references. So when they're referring to various studies in their study, how valid are those references as well? So it does take a lot of time to do the research, as opposed to looking on blogs or watching a YouTube, like a guy like me talking on YouTube. It really takes due diligence to do the work and find out what about this bioremediation. So this is a biological process of breaking down products that are potentially harmful. So, and I'll just mention, I'm going to go on a little bit of a sidetrack here for a moment. In medicine, one of the things we learn about is just because a component that's taken into our body, one of our two organ systems that really deal with products that are in our body that are in our circulatory system, the liver and the kidneys. And the liver is really well known for being able to transform through various processes, transsulfuration, transmethylation. There's all of these biochemical processes that go on physiologically within our bodies, and mainly in this case, cytochrome P450 systems in our liver. Mixed function oxidase systems, for those of you who have some science background and all. So these systems can take something that we take into our body and either add a functional group to the side to make it inert, or it may cleave off. It may chemically alter the compound in such a way that it's either more active or less active. An example would be cases I've had in the past where people with their pets didn't realize that they shouldn't be giving Tylenol to pets. And so Tylenol, really, it isn't toxic to the pets themselves, but when it goes through their body system and they don't have enough of another compound that we have in our bodies that can replenish resources, but what ends up happening is that that simple acetaminophen gets biotransformed into N-acetylbenzoquinonamine, a real mouthful. And this N-acetylbenzoquinonamine is highly toxic. It can damage your red blood cells and make them spherical, like it calls Heinz body anemia. It can create tremendous inflammation in the liver, and actually some people who have used alcohol and Tylenol together in order to either purposely commit suicide or to send their livers into liver failure. So my point with saying that slight story, there are many ways that when we take something into our body and it is biotransformed or remediated in such a way that a group is added to it or another group is cleaved from it, that it becomes potentially more toxic or potentially more water soluble, can go into our urine and can get eliminated out of our body. And I'm simplifying it, although it does sound kind of complex to those of you who haven't had enough science in your background. So when we're talking about bioremediation, we always need to look at what are the breakdown products, and those products, how are they dealt with in the environment. Now I'm going to go on another side note, and I've made a video in the past about the Environmental Work Group, EWG.org. And most people just aren't aware, and I did this in a video that I think it was titled something like how to disinfect or how to purify your water. Like all around the world, but throughout the United States, we have chemicals that are getting pumped into everybody's homes who aren't on well water that are cancer causing, and they promote inflammation as well. And a really good book, and I mentioned this before, and I'll try to remember to put a link in the bottom of this in the description below, is I think it's Superman Isn't Coming by Erin Brockovich, the movie. Erin Brockovich, played by Julia Roberts. And so some of these compounds that are used in many products that we use all the time, and from the flame retardants that are used in our furniture and in our homes. Some of these are forever chemicals that they just aren't broken down by any means that we know of thus far. And when they sample people from all over the country, whether they're very, very young or infants to elderly, they have these forever chemicals in our bodies that create a whole cascade of problems. And if getting enough of them and having the right circumstances, and it's always multifactorial. So if you're not taking good care of yourself, you're not getting your sleep, you're always stressed, you're getting a boatload of some of these chemicals there, you're next to a place that you're breathing in dangerous chemicals such as polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. I've made videos about that, and PM2s. These are those small incomplete combustion byproducts from even a barbecue, or being a cook in a restaurant that doesn't have adequate ventilation, or the materials from incomplete combustion of internal combustion engines. So if you're on the road an awful lot, or your home is right next to the road. So it's multifactorial as far as, and certainly your genetics plays a role. Things aren't just simple, is my point. There's multiple factors that come together to create the circumstances where which we could develop various disease processes. So getting back to, so the one thing I want to say is the environmentalworkgroup.org, EWG.org, is a really good place. You can put in your zip code, you can see which municipality it is, and you can see what's in your water. And one of the reasons I'm mentioning that is we need to look at, where the wind blows. My nephew lives on the other side of the river, just a little bit further distance than what I am from the river. And I'm on the west side of the river, and he's on the east side of the river. And I'm always looking at where they're putting in some facilities, whether it's an incinerator or renewable energy sources that burn various products, or whether it's a large agricultural industrial complexes. So if you're downwind, fortunately the incinerator is downwind from me, but it's upwind from my nephew. And that is just, even though we may think of it, it's not enough to cause a problem, cumulatively with other factors, I'm always looking at these things as being a potential issue. People burning garbage with their plastics as well. So it may not be you doing it, but around here, people in this area, even though it's no longer acceptable, it's one of the things that's commonly done. So having good air purification and good closed up windows in your house can be beneficial as well. And I know I've gone way off the main topic of today, but I just wanted to say that we have to look at all of the different potential sources of contaminants that we're exposing ourselves to. Does that mean we ignore potentially harmful byproducts that are in the paper products that we're laying down in our gardens, especially our vegetable gardens? No, we shouldn't. And that's why I mentioned Google Scholar, looking for the scholarly research papers and looking for them, because often they'll what gets reported in various press groups that we get in our feeds on our phones, we'll see that Inc. number 20061K it breaks down to a really significant harmful product that can get absorbed into our bodies. But when you go back and you look at the paper, the references that it has, the way that they conducted the study showed that they manipulated the system in such a way that it got directly into cell cultures, as opposed to something that was taken up into the plant and then we consumed the plant. So does the plant take up the biotransformed product, or does it not? So when I'm talking about biotransformation in the gardens and all, I'm talking about the microbial, the microbiome within the soil that you're putting the paper products, magazines, or whatever it is onto as well. So so that's one thing. So Alan, that is a great concern, and certainly I wouldn't fault anyone for doing as much as they can to reduce waste. And if you don't feel comfortable using ink products at all, then certainly don't do it. Do what's right for you. And none of us have the exact same circumstances in such situations, and many of us have different comfort zones. Even if it may not be a valid reason for being comfortable doing things, it's one of the things we each got to make up decisions on our own. Don't just blindly follow anyone who's on YouTube. My brother Jim asked a question as well. He asked about in his garden, and I'm not sure whether this is vegetable garden or flower garden. I suspect it's his flower gardens. Trying to control weeds, and he's tried, I think, weed mats. He's tried tar paper. He's tried cardboard, and someone mentioned wet newspaper. So how do we suppress the weeds? So no matter what, like how I decrease the likelihood that I'm going to have to work doing weeding, one of the things we use here is we use weed mats. The other thing we do is during off season we use the UV treated plastic tarps, and I don't like using plastic products, but this is reusable. They last pretty long, but it's a way of, during the winter months here, materials during the off season, weed seeds getting blown in, and we live in a high wind zone. So weed seeds will get into your soil. Under the right circumstances, they're going to germinate. And then we have the perennial weeds that are there, like the quackgrass, the bindweed, a whole variety of various ones, dock, there's just so many different weeds that sometimes you've got to stop. You got to deal with the weeds, and that means pulling them, doing whatever you have to do it. In some cases, I've used my excavator to dig out bindweed, got that under control. But where I had my irises around the statue that were in a circle, where the lavender, what else is there? Thyme and sage are planted. Well, right around that area, I had irises, and I had beautiful compost. I put wood chips there, and that was great for a couple of years. But the weed seeds blew into the area. They started to get they started to get a little bit of a foothold. I didn't take the time to go and deal with those weeds and pull them out at that time. Or to decide to pull the wood chips back, put some cardboard down, and put the wood chips back on it. So right now I've got a real mess. I dug out all the irises. This is temporary. And I've got dandelions, and I've got a variety of different weeds in that area. So I'm going to go out and dig out some of those if I get the chance to do it. I may use occultation. So that's using the black tarp or black plastic, putting it directly over the plants that are there. That decreases the ability for the plants, the weeds, to get the sun, and therefore photosynthesis can't happen. And what I have to do is keep it on long enough so it depletes the resources that are in the roots. And quackgrass and bindweed can actually have side shoots way out there, and their rhizomes and their roots may still remain viable. So when you take you could have it covered for 2 years, but if it's an extension beyond the tarped area, that can be a problem as well. So when we use sheet mulching using paper products and cardboard and laying that down on top of the soil surface, and then putting and gardeners will put compost on top of that, poke holes, just small little areas where they're going to put their bulb or put their seed or put their transplant into. So that plant has compost on top of the cardboard or paper products, but there's a hole through it so that moisture can get down. So the cardboard or paper products are going to inhibit the seeds from being able to see the sun and start photosynthesis. But a simple hole in the cardboard where the seed, the bulb, or the transplant went into allows only a small area where photosynthesis can occur, and therefore they can get their plants going. But you can't just do it once. You've got to do it year after year after year, because the cardboard products are going to break down. Weed seeds are going to blow in. Even if you're in a relatively low wind zone area, the weed seeds are going to blow into the area. those weed seeds will germinate under the right conditions and all. So what are some of the other ways that we control? Well, we do flame weeding, but the flame weeding isn't burning the plants. It's getting the new seedling that's just started to come up an inch or two, maybe when it gets its first couple of new leaves. So you get so a monocot has a single leaf that comes up initially, a dicot has two little leaves that come up, then they get their actual leaves that are a more advanced stage of a seedling. So if you go over it and just disrupt the cell walls of these very new and weak seedlings, then and you don't have to burn them. All you have to do is pass a flame over them gently. It heats them up enough that it damages the cell wall, and those weeds are dead. The other I've talked about some of the weeding tools that we use, and we have to use those as well. That's why we use so many weed mats in our areas, so to deal with it. That's why we use the occultation method using the UV treated black tarps, because it absorbs a lot of heat from the sun. It decreases the light, the photons from hitting the leaf surface, and therefore the chloroplasts can't do their photosynthetic processes and make their simple sugars and send them to the roots. All of those things are inhibited by using that mechanism. You can do solarization. I've used clear plastic out there as well. You take a piece of clear plastic and put it out on your lawn, and on a nice hot sunny day where there isn't a lot of moisture, it's going to cook the grass or whatever it is that's growing in that area, because it's going to have a greenhouse-like effect. It's going to be super hot underneath that area as well. So that's a way of killing weeds as well. So there's chemical, there's manual, there's using blockage, so paper products, cardboard, mulch, those sorts of things. And if you wanted to plant into that area, you can put compost on top of it. You can poke holes through the cardboard or paper so that the roots can work their way down and not be limited by just hitting the cardboard. They can make their way, or through the thick papers as well, and work their way down into the soil below it. But those weed seeds that are near the surface have been covered up and they can't germinate. You may get brand new compost and get weeds growing up in the surface of it just from weed seeds getting blown in. If the compost wasn't a thermophilic form of composting where they didn't achieve appropriate temperatures, those weed seeds weren't devitalized during the composting process, and they will germinate as well. Often you'll see people who have their own home composting systems, which I hate to use the word composting in those, I call it decomposing systems. You'll see squash growing out of their pile. You'll see various other things. Oh, this is really good. And you'll see little clumps of grass or whatever. And the reason is because it didn't achieve those high temperatures, and those seeds, whether it was a pumpkin seed or a squash seed, was able to germinate because that seed wasn't killed. Therefore, many of the other seeds won't be killed as well. And that's one of the things, there's adaptive mechanisms. This is wonderful. Sorry about that interruption. So those are my thoughts on trying to suppress weeds, and those are my thoughts about dealing with potential chemical agents that are in our products that we're putting in our gardens as well. For me, I like to separate my bioremediation systems from the gardens. However, what you're going to see today is where I'm using cardboard, paper products. I'm using sweet potatoes that are not going to last much longer. Thea went down into the root cellar and said, hey, you know what? I cooked up as many sweet potatoes as we can. These aren't going to last much longer. So she got, I don't know, like 3 or 4 or 5 gallon buckets of sweet potatoes from the root cellar from last season. And so those went into the area. So the areas under the trellis, I pulled up the weeds along the perimeters, the sides of the trellis. and I left some of the weeds in the center of the area. I brought out our cardboard that Thea had been bringing home from work. We had cardboard that we had saved, and we used paper products, lots and lots of paper products. I like to get a really nice thick layer of paper products and cardboard. This last one that you're going to see some of the footage of today, that video actually does show up with a GoPro camera. You'll see I use very little paper products and very little cardboard. In the Western garden trellis, I use tons of it there, and I really feel good about that. When I put the sweet potatoes or those things that I think are safe for the plants to have next to them, I put those up against the margins because there's higher nitrogen and other nutrients in it, whereas the wood chips don't have all the nutrients. There's a higher carbon to nitrogen ratio. Now the wood chips that I get, you'll see there's lots of small sticks. So there's bark in this as well. There are the needles. These loads came from our tree service in the fall, so the leaves were starting to fall off, so it's a higher carbon ratio. I like to get chips from the stuff when there's lots of small branches on it. They're chopped up as well, so it has a higher nitrogen component of the carbon to nitrogen ratio. So, and there is the issue of the wood chips during the first year to 2 years, maintaining a high carbon to nitrogen ratio. Therefore, it's really fungally dominated, and it could, if you don't have good enough nutrients and nitrogen in the soil that you're planting next to, then that could, in theory, rob some of the nitrogen from those plants. It wouldn't be bioavailable. But again, what have I talked about in previous videos? Having rotating your crops for beds is very important. Having companion plants that actually put nitrogen into the soil as well. Now beans are legumes, so they're nitrogen fixers. So there's lots of nitrogen going into this soil. So this is one of the places it's ideal to have the high carbon, the paper, the cardboard, the wood chips right next to it as well. So we can decrease some of the nitrogen by potentially having some of the nitrogen being given up temporarily, being adsorbed to the carbon that is during the breakdown products. And I have made videos in the past about how quickly do wood chips break down, and hugelkultur systems, how quickly do the wood in hugelkultur systems break down as well. So I feel pretty confident after years of doing these systems that I think it's pretty safe based on the scientific research that we've made available. We know that we can really decrease the weed burden for about 3 years by using this mechanism. And we know that if we're thinking about what plants we're planting in close proximity to these heavily wood mulched areas or our high carbon source areas, having nitrogen fixers there and having it have a couple of years of the nitrogen fixation going on, then I feel pretty confident that things will balance out in the long run. So what you'll see is some GoPro footage of me going down and laying down some of the materials and wheelbarrowing the wood chips up into the area. These wood chips are several months old. They would stand being piled up very high in a wood chip pile, and we live in a cold temperate zone, so I got lots of snow on them, lots of rain on them, so they're already starting their process. And by mixing them up some, we're actually it's not like turning a compost pile, but we're getting all different mix. So the ones that we can see some of the mycelium started on gets mixed in with some that were on the outer surface where the mycelium wasn't there. So that's the benefit of using the tractor and using the wheelbarrow and spreading it out as well. So I think I'll end all my monologue right here, and we'll go on to the footage. And if you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. If you don't feel comfortable with doing things the way that we're doing it, by all means do things the way that you think are best. I think it's always good to use good science-based information as opposed to just listen to some guy on YouTube talking. So Environmental Work Group, there are many different places, but certainly I think that Aaron Brockovich's book, The Superman Is Not Coming, and certainly the bioremediation searches on Google Scholar, You can look up John Todd with bioremediation, and I think it was the Omega Society. You can see where it's a self-contained, not like a biosphere, but the waste from the humans and all the products goes through a bioremediation system, and that bioremediation system amends the soil and feeds the people. So it's a closed loop system. So the whole goal is getting to reducing the amount of waste that we generate, utilizing things that are considered waste as well. And I'll stop there before I go on any further. So if you found this video of value, give us a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and by all means, folks, stay safe, do what you think is best for yourself, and take care. Bye-bye now.